Sit a chimpanzee down in front of a bowl of raw vegetables and a slab of raw meat, and it will eat for hours. Not because it's greedy, because raw food is expensive. Tough fibers, dense cell walls, uncooked protein, all of it locked behind chemical and physical barriers that take enormous amounts of chewing and enormous amounts of digestive effort to break open. Wild chimpanzees spend somewhere between 4 and 7 hours of every single day doing almost nothing but chewing. Now look at your own jaw in a mirror. Small, weak, relative to almost every other primate on the planet. Your teeth are modest. Your gut is, compared to a chimpanzee of similar body size, less than half as large. And yet you eat for what, an hour a day, maybe 2? And it's enough to fuel a brain that burns through calories at a rate wildly out of proportion to your body size. Something happened to us. Something that rewired human anatomy so thoroughly that we can no longer survive on the diet every other primate on Earth still eats. And the honest, uncomfortable version of this story isn't really about a clever discovery. It's about a trade our ancestors made with their own bodies. A trade that paid off spectacularly. And a trade we can never take back. Let's start with the anatomy, because the body itself is where this story actually begins. Harvard biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham, in his 2009 book Catching Fire, laid out an argument built on a simple but genuinely radical premise. He looked at the fossil record and noticed something that didn't quite add up using the explanations available at the time. Roughly 1.8 million years ago, a new hominin species appeared, Homo erectus, and it looked strikingly different from what came before. A significantly larger brain, a noticeably larger body, and, running in the opposite direction, a smaller gut, a smaller jaw, and smaller teeth. Wrangham argued that this specific combination, a bigger brain and body paired with a shrinking digestive system, could really only be explained by one thing. A fundamental shift in diet quality is dramatic enough to support a larger brain while simultaneously requiring less digestive machinery to process. In Wrangham's view, the only realistic candidate for such a dramatic change was cooked food. The science underneath this argument has a name. The expensive tissue hypothesis was first proposed by anthropologist Leslie Aiello and physiologist Peter Wheeler back in 1995. Both brain tissue and gut tissue are metabolically expensive to maintain, meaning they consume a disproportionate amount of the body's total energy budget simply by being present and performing their functions. Aiello and Wheeler's insight was that evolution appears to have made a direct trade between the two. Shrink the energy-hungry gut, and you free up metabolic budget that can be redirected toward growing an energy-hungry brain instead. Cooking, Wrangham argued, is what made that specific trade possible, because cooked food is dramatically easier to digest than raw food. Heat breaks down collagen in meat. It softens plant cell walls and releases the starches trapped inside them. A body eating cooked food simply doesn't need as much digestive real estate to extract the same, or more, energy from a meal. Here's where the story gets genuinely complicated, though, and it's worth sitting with the complication honestly, rather than smoothing it over. Wrangham's anatomical argument points to roughly 1.8 million years ago, but the actual physical archaeological evidence for controlled fire doesn't reach nearly that far back with the same level of confidence. The most robust, widely accepted evidence for early fire use comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where researchers led by archaeologist Francesco Berna identified microscopic traces of wood ash and burned bone in a layer dated to roughly 1 million years ago, a discovery published in 2012 and still regarded as the oldest secure evidence of controlled fire use by early humans. That leaves a genuine, unresolved gap of roughly 800,000 years between when Wrangham's biology says cooking should have started and when the clearest physical evidence confirms it definitely had. Researchers haven't stopped digging at Wonderwork, and the gap has been narrowing. A 2026 study using a newly developed technique for detecting heat exposure in fossilized bone examined deeper, older layers at the same cave and found evidence of repeated burning stretching back even further, somewhere between 1.07 and 1.79 million years ago, edging remarkably close to Wrangham's original anatomical estimate. The findings are still being evaluated by the wider research community, and the debate over exactly when and how consistently early Homo erectus was actually controlling fire, as opposed to opportunistically using fires that started naturally, remains genuinely unresolved. What's not in dispute is the anatomy itself. Something pushed the human digestive system to shrink and the human brain to expand, and cooked food remains the explanation with the strongest supporting evidence behind it. So let's talk about what humanity actually gained from this trade. because the payoff was real, and it was enormous. Start with the raw math of digestion. Wrangham has pointed out that a human of modern body size, trying to survive purely on raw, unprocessed plant food, would need to eat something in the range of 12 pounds of it a day just to hit a survivable calorie count. Even supplementing that diet with raw meat barely moves the number, because chewing raw meat efficiently enough to extract meaningful calories from it, even at a chimpanzee's fast chewing rate, still caps out at a few hundred calories an hour. There simply aren't enough hours in a day to chew your way to survival on a fully raw diet at modern human body size. Cooking solved this instantly and completely. It pre-digests food before it ever reaches your mouth, breaking down the same tough proteins and fibrous plant walls that would otherwise cost hours of jaw work and gut effort, and it does it in minutes over a fire instead of hours in your stomach. That single shift rewired the entire daily budget of early human life. Hours that used to be spent locked into the mechanical, repetitive labor of chewing were suddenly available for something else entirely. Time to make tools, time to travel further in search of resources, time to sit together, awake, in the safety of firelight, doing something that had never really been possible before at any real scale. Talking. Cooking fires, several researchers studying the social dimensions of this shift have argued, may have created some of the first reliable, extended windows of shared downtime in hominin history. Exactly the kind of setting where language, storytelling, and complex social bonding could take root and strengthen. And the caloric surplus didn't just buy free time, it bought brain tissue directly. The human brain, relative to body size, is roughly 3 times larger than you'd expect for a mammal our size, and it is staggeringly expensive to run, consuming a wildly disproportionate share of the body's total energy at rest. That energy had to come from somewhere, and the shrinking gut, no longer needing to process raw, difficult-to-digest food, is very likely where a significant share of it came from. This is the version of the story most people already know, at least in outline. Cooking made us smarter, freed our time, and built our brains. It's a genuinely remarkable trade, but it was a trade. And every real trade has a cost side of the ledger, and the cost side of this one rarely gets mentioned at all. Here's the part that should actually unsettle you a little. Somewhere along that evolutionary path, the human body didn't just gain the ability to benefit from cooked food, it lost the ability to comfortably survive without it. Modern experiments on strict raw food diets, conducted with people who have access to the full range of modern tools, blenders, dehydrators, and an enormous global variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds available essentially year-round, still consistently show serious problems. Studies on women following strict raw vegan diets have found alarmingly high rates of amenorrhea, the complete loss of menstrual cycles, a direct physiological signal that the body isn't receiving enough usable energy to safely support reproduction. And this is happening under modern conditions, with modern nutritional knowledge and modern food availability working in the dieter's favor. It is not remotely comparable to trying to survive on strictly raw food in the wild, using only what an ancient environment happened to offer that particular season. Which means the honest, uncomfortable version of this story isn't just cooking made us smarter, it's this. At some point, likely alongside the emergence of Homo erectus roughly 1.8 million years ago, the human body crossed a one-way threshold. Our jaws got smaller and weaker. Our teeth got smaller and less capable of processing genuinely tough, fibrous food. Our guts shrank down to a size that simply cannot reliably extract enough calories from an entirely raw diet to keep a modern human body, and especially a modern human brain, properly fueled. We didn't just start relying on cooking as a convenient option. We became biologically dependent on it, the same way we're dependent on breathing oxygen or drinking water. Except this dependency was entirely self-inflicted, a direct consequence of a trade our own ancestors made without any way of knowing what they were signing up for on the other side of it. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. No other primate on Earth has painted itself into this particular corner. A chimpanzee separated from human civilization entirely, dropped into any forest with a reasonable food supply, will be completely fine, because its jaw, its teeth, and its gut are all still fully built for exactly the diet its ancestors always ate. A modern human dropped into the same forest, cut off from fire, from tools, from any way to soften and pre-process food, is in genuine biological trouble within days, not because humans are somehow inferior, but because we deliberately, gradually, over roughly 2 million years, traded away our own capacity for digestive self-sufficiency in exchange for a bigger brain and a faster, easier way of eating. We have the smartest brain on the planet. We paid for it with an entire evolutionary safety net that every other animal around us still has, and we do not. There's a deeper layer to this trade worth sitting with, too, because it isn't just about biology anymore once cooking becomes mandatory rather than optional. It's about what cooking does to the structure of daily life itself. A fire has to be started. It has to be fed, tended, and protected from wind and rain. It has to be kept alive, sometimes for entire seasons at a time, because in a world without matches or lighters, letting a fire go out completely could mean a genuinely difficult, sometimes impossible task of starting a brand new one from scratch. That single, ongoing requirement reshaped how ancient human groups had to organize themselves. Someone, at almost all times, needed to be near the fire. Cooking fires very likely became fixed, central points around which entire daily schedules, entire social structures, and quite possibly entire divisions of labor within early human groups began to organize themselves, not by careful design, but simply because the fire itself demanded it, every single day, without exception, for the rest of human history. So why did ancient humans start cooking? The anatomical evidence, the shrinking guts, the shrinking jaws, the expanding brains, point to a dietary transformation beginning somewhere around 1.8 million years ago. The clearest physical evidence for controlled fire itself currently reaches back roughly 1 million years with real confidence, with newer, still debated findings pushing that number closer to 1.79 million years. Somewhere inside that genuinely uncertain window, our ancestors began doing something no other species on this planet had ever fully committed to. Using an external tool not just to prepare food, but to functionally replace part of their own digestive system. It bought them time. It bought them calories. It very plausibly bought them the brain sitting inside your own skull right now, doing the work of reading and understanding this sentence. But it also quietly closed a door behind them that has never reopened. Every human being alive today carries a body built by that ancient trade, a body that can no longer survive on the raw, unprocessed world the way every one of our primate cousins still comfortably can. We didn't just discover cooking. We made ourselves need it.